Far above the fields of green and the sleepy villages with their candlelit windows, there drifted a small cloud named Nimbus. If you looked up on a bright afternoon, you might never have noticed him at all. He was smaller than the rest, like a single puff of cotton floating on the breeze. While great billowing thunderclouds rumbled and tall proud cumulus clouds towered over mountains, Nimbus was light and soft, no more than a gentle wisp. He was a quiet little thing. He didn't like thundering or pouring rain or covering the whole sky in a gray blanket. He preferred drifting alone, gliding over the hills and valleys where he could watch the world below without getting in the way. Farmers plowed their fields and children ran after butterflies, never glancing up to see Nimbus watching them. He often wondered if they even knew he was there. Sometimes, Nimbus thought that if he were just a little bigger or fluffier, maybe someone would point up and say, "Look at that fine cloud." But no one ever did. Instead, the only ones who ever noticed him were the birds. The swallows flitted past with quick, cheerful chirps. "Good day to you, Nimbus," they'd call as they darted by. He liked that, of course. But he wanted more. Deep inside his soft, damp heart, Nimbus longed for something he didn't quite understand. He wanted to be seen, really seen. To feel that he belonged to something bigger, something brighter. To matter. When evening came and the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Nimbus would linger in the darkening sky, waiting for the stars. They were the first to catch the last rays of daylight. One by one, they sparkled into view, high above where clouds could drift. Each tiny glimmer seemed to whisper secrets into the night. Nimbus adored them. He thought the stars were the most beautiful things he had ever seen. They never had to worry about drifting away or disappearing in the morning sun. They never felt small or unnoticed. Even from far below, every creature looked up at them in wonder. Sometimes, he would hover as close to them as he could, stretching himself into a tall pillar of mist, wishing he could reach their shining heights. But no matter how high he rose, he never got close enough to touch even a single star. On this particular evening, Nimbus floated alone over a sleeping orchard. The scent of ripe apples drifted up through the cooling air. He tried to focus on it, but his eyes were fixed on the heavens, where the stars had begun their slow, silent dance. One star in particular seemed to twinkle more brightly than the others. It was neither the biggest nor the closest, but it had a curious flicker that felt like a friendly wink. Nimbus drifted upward, higher than he'd ever dared before, hoping this time he might get just a little nearer. "Be careful, little cloud," called a passing nightjar, its wings a blur in the fading twilight. "The higher you go, the colder it gets." But Nimbus didn't hear. All he could think about was the wish that had begun to bloom inside him, as surely as the night was unfolding above. "I want to be a star," he thought. "Just for one night. Just once, I want to shine so brightly that everyone will look up and see me." Below, the orchard grew dark and still. The houses were lit by warm, golden lamps. Children were being tucked into their beds, listening to bedtime stories of heroes and kingdoms and treasure. No one knew that a little cloud was trying to climb into the sky, searching for a way to become something more. Nimbus drifted higher, feeling the air grow thin and cold. A shiver rippled through him, making him shrink a little. Still, he kept climbing, stretching himself taller and taller. The stars seemed no closer than before. When the night grew late and the moon rose over the hills, Nimbus finally let himself drift back down to where the air was softer. He settled over a darkened meadow, curling himself into a ball. He felt emptier than ever. Even the moonlight could not reach all the way into his misty heart. Just then, a soft voice drifted from the grass below. "You look sad tonight," said the voice. It belonged to an old owl perched on a wooden fence post. Her eyes were round and golden, reflecting the starlight as she watched him. Nimbus was surprised. No one had spoken to him in the darkness before. "I am," he admitted in his quiet, damp voice. "I'm only a little cloud, you see. No one notices me. I wish I could be something more. Something bright." "Something bright?" The owl cocked her head. "Like a lightning cloud?" Nimbus shook himself gently, shedding a little mist into the cool night. "Not lightning. Not rain. I don't want to frighten anyone or make them run inside. I want to be, well, a star." The owl was silent for a moment. Her feathers ruffled in the breeze. "A star," she repeated softly. "That is a very big wish, little cloud." "I know," Nimbus whispered. "It's foolish. I know I can't really be a star. I'm just Nimbus." The owl tilted her head the other way, as though she were weighing his words. "Perhaps it isn't so foolish," she said at last. "Every creature has a place in the world, and every creature has a purpose. If your heart longs to shine, then maybe you are meant to find a way." Nimbus lifted his misty head. "Do you really think so?" "I do," the owl said. "But you mustn't give up when the climb feels too high. The stars are far, but dreams can be nearer than you think." Her words sank deep into Nimbus's thoughts. No one had ever spoken to him as if he were more than a drifting bit of cloud. As if his wish mattered. "Thank you," Nimbus said. I think I needed someone to say that." "You're welcome," the owl said. She turned her head to the sky. "Look how bright they shine tonight. Perhaps they're listening." Nimbus gazed up at the stars again. They seemed to sparkle just a little more brightly than before, as though they were waiting for him to speak. For a moment, he felt something he hadn't felt before, a tiny flicker of hope, like the first glow of dawn on the edge of the sky. "Maybe there is a way," he thought. "Maybe I just have to find it." The owl gave a soft hoot, as though she could hear his thoughts. "If you wish to find a way to shine, you must look beyond where you've drifted before. There are old stories, little cloud, stories of places where wishes are carried up to the stars." Nimbus drifted closer. "Stories? What kind of places?" "Hidden places," the owl replied. "Forgotten by most. But perhaps not by you. You must search. You must ask questions. You must believe." A breeze sighed across the meadow, carrying the scents of night, damp grass, wildflowers, and something else Nimbus couldn't name. It felt like the scent of possibility. "I will," Nimbus whispered, feeling stronger somehow, though he was still only a wisp in the wide sky. "I will find a way." The owl blinked her golden eyes. "Then I will watch for you. Every night. When you shine, I'll know you found your place." Nimbus felt his heart swell until he thought he might burst into rain. But for the first time, it wasn't sadness or loneliness that filled him. It was something warmer. "Good night, little cloud," the owl said. "Good night," Nimbus replied. He drifted higher once more, but this time, not to chase the stars out of desperation. He climbed because he believed, just a little, that maybe there was a way to become something more. As he settled among the other small clouds gathering at the edge of dawn, Nimbus closed his eyes. He dreamed of the twinkling star that had seemed to wink at him. He dreamed of a night when he would shine as bright as any of them. And though the morning sun was just beginning to push back the darkness, Nimbus felt that his journey was only beginning. Morning came slowly to the meadow, the darkness lifting petal by petal, like a flower opening to the dawn. The orchard shimmered with dew. The first birds stretched their wings and began their chorus of sleepy, hopeful songs. Nimbus drifted lower, watching as the golden sunlight rolled across the fields. Though he loved the night most of all, he had always found something comforting in this quiet hour before the world woke up. But this morning felt different. The owl's words still echoed in his heart. If you wish to find a way to shine, you must look beyond where you've drifted before. He could not shake the feeling that he was meant to begin searching, even if he did not know how. Below, the orchard trees stood in perfect rows, their leaves rustling in the soft breeze. Children tumbled sleepily out of their houses to help gather fallen apples. A farmer with a red kerchief tied around her hair waved to the sun as though greeting an old friend. And yet, no one looked up at Nimbus. No one ever did. Not yet, he reminded himself. But one day. With the first true warmth of morning rising to meet him, Nimbus closed his eyes for just a moment. He didn't mean to fall asleep, but he'd spent the night drifting higher than ever before, and even little clouds need to rest. When he awoke, the sun had climbed higher in the sky, and the air had grown restless. A current of wind had arrived, swirling through the orchard and ruffling the grass. Nimbus opened his eyes to see an enormous old cloud sweeping past. This cloud was like none he'd ever seen, long and silver-edged, with a voice that rumbled low and deep as rolling thunder in the far distance. "Hello there, small one," the old cloud called in a voice that seemed to come from every direction. "I nearly passed you by." Nimbus felt very tiny in the old cloud's shadow. "Good morning," he said shyly. "Good morning indeed," the old cloud replied, drifting in a lazy circle around Nimbus. "I am Zephyros, the wandering wind cloud." "And who might you be?" "My name is Nimbus." "A fine name," said Zephyros. "I've drifted many skies, but I don't recall meeting you before." "I don't usually leave this valley," Nimbus admitted, feeling his edges grow faint with embarrassment. "I'm not much of a traveler." Zephyros let out a chuckle like a soft roll of thunder. "Then today must be special, if you've risen high enough to meet me." Nimbus hesitated. He hadn't meant to confess his wish to anyone else, but something about Zephyros felt trustworthy, like a great-grandparent who had seen many things. "I want to ask you something," Nimbus said quietly. Zephyros slowed his swirling dance and listened. "Have you ever," Nimbus began, his voice almost too soft to hear. "Have you ever wanted to be something more than a cloud?" Zephyros was silent for a time. The breeze grew still, as if the whole sky were listening. "I have," the old cloud said at last. "Long, long ago." Nimbus felt a tiny spark of hope. "You have?" "I did," Zephyros said. "I was young, like you, no bigger than a wisp of morning mist. I watched the lightning clouds crack the sky and the thunderheads command the rain, and I wished to be as mighty as they. I tried to grow large and dark, to roar and boom. But no matter how much I puffed myself up, I was always more breeze than storm." Nimbus listened closely, imagining a little silver cloud trying to roar like thunder. "So what did you do?" he asked. "I drifted," Zephyros said. "I drifted far and wide, searching for something I could not name. And I learned a secret that only the oldest winds know." "What secret?" Nimbus whispered. Zephyros tilted his wide, curling body so that a shaft of sunlight streamed through him, making him shimmer like glass. "The secret," he said, "is that every longing comes from somewhere. If you wish to be a star, perhaps there is a reason your heart carries that wish. The world does not place dreams in us by accident." Nimbus felt the air around him grow still again. He wanted to believe that. I wish I knew how to become a star, Nimbus murmured. Zephyros's voice softened until it was no more than a breeze. Long ago, the old winds told me a tale. They spoke of a place beyond the northern mountains, higher than any bird has ever flown. There, it is said, the stars reached down their light to touch the earth. They called it the Celestial Peak. Celestial Peak, Nimbus repeated, tasting the words. They sounded like something out of the owl's stories. It is no easy place to find, Zephyros continued. Many clouds drift their whole lives and never see it. But if you wish to stand among the stars, it may be the only place in all the sky where such a thing is possible. Do you think it's real? Nimbus asked. Zephyros was quiet for a moment, and then he sighed. I do not know. I searched for it when I was young, but I never reached the far side of the mountains. The winds grew too strong, and I turned back. Perhaps it was my fate to remain a wanderer. Nimbus drifted a little closer. But if you believe it might be real, then maybe I could try. You could, Zephyros agreed. But the journey is long. You will pass over frozen peaks and dark forests. The winds will test you, little cloud. And when you arrive, you may find nothing at all. Nimbus looked toward the horizon, where the mountains rose in a hazy blue line. They seemed impossibly far. He had never even drifted to the next valley. But when he looked up and saw the pale ghost of the moon still hanging in the bright sky, he felt his wish burn stronger. I want to try, he said. Even if I never find it, I want to see how far I can go. Zephyros's vast shape shifted in the sunlight. Then perhaps our meeting was no accident, he said. If you wish it, I will carry you as far as my winds will blow. You do that? Nimbus asked, astonished. Once, Zephyros said with a low, thoughtful hum, I wished someone had helped me start my journey. Now, I can be that help for you. Nimbus felt so full of feeling he thought he might dissolve into a summer rain. Thank you, he whispered. I don't know how to repay you. Live your story, Zephyros said. Find your own place in the sky. That is enough. With a great stirring of currents, Zephyros turned to the north. Are you ready, little cloud? Nimbus looked one last time at the valley he had always called home, the orchard and the red-roofed cottages, the fields where the children played. He had always believed he belonged here, drifting alone in circles, waiting for the stars to notice him. But maybe, just maybe, he had always belonged somewhere he had never seen. I'm ready, he said, and he meant it. Zephyros gave a great, rolling laugh. Then hold tight. In an instant, the old wind cloud gathered his currents and surged forward, carrying Nimbus with him. They rose higher than Nimbus had ever dared, leaving the valley behind in a rush of wild air. Below, the world unfurled like a patchwork quilt, forests, rivers, and hills, all drifting slowly beneath them. The sun shone warm on Nimbus's back, and for the first time, he felt more than a drifting wisp. He felt like a traveler, a seeker, maybe even a dreamer. And as they sailed north toward the hidden celestial peak, Nimbus whispered to himself a promise. I will find the place where the stars reach down. I will become something bright. I will not give up. Zephyros's winds carried him onward, and the sky stretched vast and full of possibility. Somewhere far ahead, the stars waited. And Nimbus, the little cloud, was finally on his way to meet them. Nimbus had never traveled so far in his life. Below him, the world changed hour by hour. First, he passed over the soft green valleys he knew, where apple orchards quilted the land in tidy squares. Then came wide stretches of farmland, golden with ripening wheat. The fields gave way to forests that rose like emerald waves against the foothills. And beyond the forests, at last, lay the mountains. They were enormous, far larger than he had ever imagined. Their peaks pierced the sky in sharp spires. Even the tallest thunderclouds Nimbus had seen before never climbed so high. At dawn, their white summits blushed pink with the first light. By evening, they glowed like embers, waiting for night to fall. As Zephyros carried him over the lower slopes, Nimbus felt smaller than ever, but in a different way, less like a forgotten wisp, and more like a humble pilgrim among giants. "You see them?" Zephyros rumbled, his voice full of memory. "The mountains of whispering pines. That is what the old winds called them. Because if you drift low enough, you can hear the pines telling their secrets." "Secrets?" Nimbus asked, intrigued. "Old stories," Zephyros said. "The trees have watched many journeys. They remember every cloud, every bird, every falling leaf. Some say their whispers guide those who have lost their way." Nimbus peered down through a veil of mist. The forests below were dense and dark, miles and miles of evergreens. The trees moved gently, though no wind seemed to stir them. "Do you think they'll tell me anything?" Nimbus wondered aloud. Zephyros hummed thoughtfully. "If you listen closely, perhaps. But the trees only share their secrets when they choose." They glided on, higher and higher, until even Zephyros grew quiet. The air grew colder, thinning around Nimbus's edges. He felt himself contract, growing denser in the chill. "Stay close," Zephyros warned. "These peaks are home to strong crosswinds that will try to scatter you. Hold fast to your purpose." Nimbus tried to do exactly that. He reminded himself why he was here. To find the celestial peak. To touch the stars. To shine. It was easy to remember in the warmth of the valley. Up here, in the empty cold, doubt crept in like frost. "What if I never find it?" he whispered as they soared over a glacier so bright it hurt his eyes. "What if it's only a story?" Zephyros didn't answer right away. Instead, he lifted Nimbus higher still, until the glacier lay far below and the sky deepened to a richer, darker blue. Finally, in a voice that was barely more than a sigh, he said, "Then you will have been brave enough to try. And that will matter." Nimbus tried to hold on to those words as the day passed into evening. They flew for hours more until, at last, Zephyros slowed. "This is as far as I can take you," the old cloud said. His vast silver body billowed around Nimbus like a protective cloak. "Beyond this ridge, the winds become wild and tangled. If I go farther, I will scatter apart." Nimbus felt a sudden, frightened emptiness. I don't know if I can go on alone." Zephyros turned slowly, so that the last rays of sunlight glowed along his edges. "You are not alone," he said. "Every step of the way, you will be carrying all who ever believed in you. The owl. The birds. Even me. But, how will I find the celestial peak without you?" Nimbus asked, his voice quivering. "The path is yours to discover," Zephyros said gently. "But look." He pointed, though he had no hands, Nimbus felt exactly where he meant. On the farthest horizon, a shape rose even higher than the rest of the mountains. It gleamed pale blue, almost like ice, but also like something softer, something more like starlight. "That is the peak," Zephyros said. "I believe it." Nimbus stared. It felt impossibly far. But it was real, he could see it. I wish you could come with me, he said. I will always be with you, Zephyros replied. And if you ever wish to return, search the valleys for my currents. I will come. Nimbus thought he might weep, but clouds can only shed rain, and this was not a moment for rain. Thank you, he said simply. Zephyros gave a final, deep chuckle that echoed among the peaks. Fly well, little cloud. Then, with a swirl of wind, he turned and began to drift back south, carrying the memories of all his journeys. Nimbus watched until Zephyros was no more than a glint of silver mist against the darkening sky. For a long time, he felt as still as the glaciers below. The stars began to appear, one by one, timid at first, then braver as the night deepened. Each tiny point of light reminded him why he was here. I'm going to find you, he whispered to the stars. I'm going to be like you. The stars said nothing. They only shimmered. But somehow, he felt they were listening. Nimbus gathered himself. He drifted alone now, feeling the cold air tug at his edges. It would be easier to turn back, to slip down to the valley where the winds were gentle and the world was familiar. But something stronger than fear kept him moving, a wish that had become too big to leave behind. Below, the pine trees whispered their secrets to the night. Nimbus lowered himself until he hovered just above their dark crowns. And there, if he listened with all of himself, he heard them. Follow the river of starlight. The voice was so faint he almost thought he imagined it. But as he drifted forward, the trees murmured again. Trust what shines in you. Nimbus felt his damp heart flutter. The pines were guiding him. Above, the stars formed a silver path across the sky, like a river, winding over the mountains. Perhaps it was only the Milky Way. Perhaps it was something more. I will follow you, Nimbus whispered to the stars, to the trees, to his own quiet longing. And so he began to drift northward, one small cloud in a wilderness of dark peaks and bright stars. He traveled through the night. Sometimes he grew afraid when the winds pulled at him, trying to scatter him like a handful of ash. Sometimes he felt so small he wondered if he was only dreaming. But always, he remembered Zephyros's words, every step of the way, you will be carrying all who ever believed in you. That thought was enough to keep him from turning back. At dawn, the sky brightened slowly from black to deep sapphire, then to pale rose. Nimbus found a sheltered hollow between two crags of stone and rested there as the first light touched the glaciers. He closed his eyes, exhausted but hopeful. Tomorrow, he thought, I will be closer. And maybe, when I reach that peak, I will finally become something bright. With that last thought, Nimbus drifted into sleep, the mountain winds quiet around him. Somewhere beyond the highest ridge, the celestial peak waited, shining faintly even in daylight, calling him onward. Nimbus woke when the sun was high, warming the cold stone cliffs around him. Though he had never slept so far from home, he felt no fear as he opened his eyes. Instead, he felt a quiet sense of wonder. The hollow where he had rested was shaped like a giant bowl, carved by ages of wind and rain. Above, the peaks circled him like guardians. Here, the air was still, and the silence was so deep that he could hear his own thoughts as though they were voices whispering all around. He drifted upward carefully, testing the morning currents. A breeze slid past him, gentle as a sigh. Far in the distance, the celestial peak gleamed pale against the brightening sky. Closer, he reminded himself. I'm closer today than I was yesterday. Below the ridge, the mountains unfurled into a hidden valley. From above, Nimbus could see a silver river winding between ancient trees and rocky outcrops. Even in daylight, it seemed to shimmer faintly with its own light, as if it carried starlight along its winding path. Follow the river of starlight. The memory of the pine's whisper stirred in him again. Nimbus drifted down toward the valley. As he did, the air grew sweeter. He tasted the scent of pine resin, damp moss, and something else, something that reminded him of nighttime, of wishes breathed into darkness. When he passed below the tree line, he saw that the valley floor was dotted with pools, each one perfectly round and still. Their surfaces were so smooth that they reflected the sky without a single ripple. Curious, Nimbus lowered himself until he hovered just above the nearest pool. He peered down and saw his own small shape, pale and soft, mirrored in the water. But something else shimmered there too, an image that was not his reflection at all. A little boy sat beside the pool, his knees drawn to his chest. He had dark hair that fell into his eyes, and he was looking up at the sky, searching for something. Nimbus peered closer. The boy's lips moved, though Nimbus heard no sound. The image blurred, then cleared again. Now it showed a young woman, standing in a field of tall grass, her hand lifted to the stars as if she were trying to touch them. Then a new figure appeared, an old man in a rocking chair, wrapped in a patchwork quilt. His eyes were closed, but his face wore an expression of such peace that Nimbus felt something ache inside him. What are these? Nimbus wondered. He drifted to the next pool, and the next. Each one showed a different vision. A little girl releasing a paper lantern into the sky. A shepherd boy lying on his back, whispering secrets to the moon. A young mother cradling her baby by candlelight, singing softly. All of them were looking upward. All of them were dreaming. Nimbus felt a shiver pass through him. Do you see them? The voice came from somewhere close. Nimbus turned in surprise, searching for its source. On a boulder beside the largest pool perched a bird unlike any he'd ever met. Its feathers were deep blue, flecked with tiny white specks that gleamed like stars. Its eyes were bright and knowing. Who are you? Nimbus asked, his voice hushed. The bird tilted its head. I am called Lyra, she said. Keeper of the Valley of Echoing Dreams. Echoing dreams? Nimbus repeated. Yes, Lyra said. This is where dreams gather when they are spoken into the night. Every wish, every longing, every quiet hope rises into the sky. Some drift here, to rest a while. Nimbus felt his heart grow warm. So these pools, they show dreams. They do, Lyra said. These are the reflections of all who have ever looked up and wondered if there is more. Nimbus drifted closer to the largest pool, feeling a trembling in his misty chest. I have a dream too, he whispered. I know, Lyra replied, her voice as soft as twilight. I have watched you climb the mountains, little cloud. You are not the first to wish to touch the stars, but you may be the first of your kind to come this far. Nimbus wasn't sure what to say. He lowered himself until he nearly touched the water's surface. May I see my dream? He asked. Lyra regarded him solemnly. Only if you are certain you wish to. Why wouldn't I want to? Because dreams, when reflected, show not only what you hope for, but all that stands in your way. Nimbus felt a pang of fear. What if the reflection showed him that he could never be anything more than a small cloud? That no matter how far he drifted, the stars would always remain out of reach. But something in Lyra's gaze made him brave. I want to see, he said, his voice steady. Then look. Nimbus closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his courage. When he opened them again, he fixed his gaze on the still water. At first, he saw only his own shape, a pale, quivering wisp. Then the image shifted. He saw himself drifting far above the valley, his edges glowing with a faint light. In this vision, he was rising higher and higher, until the air turned black and filled with stars. His heart leapt. I'm doing it, he thought. I'm becoming a star. But then the vision flickered, and he saw himself dissolving in the cold heights, broken into nothing by the winds. He shuddered. The image changed again, this time showing him returning to his valley, defeated and small, the children below never once looking up. Nimbus drew back in fear. I don't want to see anymore, he whispered. Lyra did not look away. Dreams show both the light and the shadows, she said gently. But remember, these are only possibilities, not certainties. Which will come true? Nimbus asked. That is yours to decide, Lyra replied. You cannot know which path will be yours until you choose to keep going, or turn back. Nimbus felt as though he were balanced on the edge of something vast. Part of him wanted to hide among the foothills, to pretend he had never wished for more. But the stronger part, the part that had brought him all this way, whispered. I am not ready to give up. He drifted back to the pool and looked down once more. I will keep going, he said quietly. Lyra inclined her head, and in that moment, the pool's surface shimmered. For a heartbeat, Nimbus saw an image of himself shining in the sky, bright as any star. Then it vanished. You are brave, Lyra said. That is rarer than you know. Nimbus felt a flush of something like pride. Thank you. Lyra spread her midnight wings. When you leave this valley, follow the river until it disappears among the cliffs. There you will find a path that climbs higher than any other. If you can follow it to the end, you will reach the celestial peak. Will you come with me? Nimbus asked, though he knew the answer. I cannot leave this place, Lyra said. But I will watch the skies for your light. Nimbus felt a warmth he had never known, a sense that, no matter what happened, he would never again be truly alone. Goodbye, he said softly. Lyra inclined her head once more. Farewell, little cloud. Nimbus turned away from the pools and rose slowly, feeling the last traces of fear drift from him like morning mist. Above, the stars were hidden by daylight. But he knew they were there, waiting. And he knew he would keep going, one breath, one drift, one dream at a time. Nimbus rose above the valley of echoing dreams, his edges tingling with a new certainty. For the first time since he had left home, he felt that every moment, every struggle, every whisper of doubt, had led him here on purpose. Below, the pools gleamed like tiny mirrors, collecting the first traces of evening. The silver river wound northward, just as Lyra had promised. Nimbus turned to follow it, drifting slowly along the winding path. The valley narrowed, the trees growing sparse as cliffs rose higher on each side. The river glimmered faintly in the deepening dusk, a ribbon of soft light leading him forward. As he traveled, Nimbus thought about the visions he had seen in the pools. He wished he could forget the image of himself dissolving in the cold, high winds. But another part of him clung to the last glimpse, of himself shining among the stars. That one memory felt like a promise he could hold on to, no matter how far he still had to go. The sun slipped behind the cliffs, and night gathered all around. The sky turned first violet, then indigo, and finally the rich, endless black that Nimbus loved most of all. One by one, the stars appeared. They were brighter here, far from the lights of the villages and towns. Some glimmered steadily, ancient and calm. Others flickered as though winking to him. Nimbus rose a little higher, letting the cool air soothe the tired places in his mist. Hello, he whispered, his voice trembling with hope. I'm coming. A breeze drifted past, carrying the scents of stone and pine and something sharper, like frost. Nimbus felt a shiver of unease. The cliffs ahead rose into jagged peaks, their dark shapes slicing into the sky. Between them, the river disappeared, swallowed by a steep gorge. This must be the place Lyra meant, Nimbus thought. Where the path climbs higher than any other. He floated closer, searching for a way up. For a moment, he saw no path, only shadows and sheer walls of rock. Then, in a small hollow between the cliffs, a faint glimmer caught his eye. He drifted toward it and saw a narrow trail of pale stones winding up the mountainside, nearly invisible in the darkness. Nimbus took a deep breath, though clouds do not breathe as creatures do. He gathered himself and began to climb. The path was not easy. Here, the winds were restless, swirling and tugging at him from all sides. Every time he rose a little higher, a sudden gust would push him back, threatening to scatter him among the crags. More than once, he thought of turning around, of drifting back to the safety of the valley or even all the way home. But then he would glance up and see the stars shining patiently overhead, and something in him would tighten with determination. I have come too far to stop now. Hour by hour, he climbed. The night grew colder, and the stars multiplied, until the whole sky seemed alive with glimmering lights. And then, just past midnight, something began to change. At first, Nimbus thought he was imagining it. A single star detached itself from the sky and fell, trailing a long silver tail. Then another. And another. In moments, the heavens were alive with movement. Dozens, hundreds, of bright streaks cascaded toward the earth, lighting the cliffs with each silent blaze. A meteor shower. Nimbus hovered in awe, feeling his edges tremble. He had heard of such nights, when the stars shed sparks like bright seeds. But never had he seen it himself. They fell in waves, some swift and straight, others curling in graceful arcs. Each left a trail that faded slowly behind it, like a memory dissolving into darkness. For a moment, Nimbus forgot how tired he was, how far he had come. He felt only wonder. This is why I came, he thought. To see the sky like this. One star fell brighter than the rest, a brilliant flare that turned the peaks to silver. Nimbus stretched himself tall, reaching toward it as if he could catch it in his soft mist. As the light passed overhead, he whispered, "Show me the way." And in that instant, the falling star seemed to flicker, just once, as though it heard. When the shower finally began to fade, Nimbus felt something he had never felt before. It wasn't quite sadness, though he wished the stars could have fallen forever. It was something gentler, a quiet gratitude for having been there to witness it. Even if I never reach the peak, he thought, this night will always be mine. He gathered his strength and climbed again. With each gust of wind, he reminded himself. I have seen the stars fall. I have come farther than I ever dreamed. I will not give up now. Slowly, steadily, the narrow trail led him higher. The cliffs flattened into a broad ledge where he could rest, if only for a while. Nimbus settled there, feeling the cold seep into his edges. The sky was quiet now, the last meteors fading into memory. But the stars still glowed in their places, serene and unhurried. Nimbus watched them and thought of the owl, and Zephyros, and Lyra. He thought of the orchard where he had drifted unseen, wishing for something more. They would be proud of me, he thought. The idea filled him with a warmth that no wind could steal away. He closed his eyes, gathering his thoughts like a cloak around him. Tomorrow, he told himself, I will climb the final ridge. And if I can stand on the celestial peak, maybe, just maybe, the stars will let me shine among them. He was so tired. But even in his exhaustion, he felt a peace he had never known. High above, the stars continued their silent watch. And Nimbus, the little cloud who had once been afraid to leave his valley, drifted into sleep beneath their gentle light. He dreamed of bright paths and open skies. He dreamed of finding his place among the stars. And in the darkness, the wind sighed around him, soft and full of promise. Morning came slowly to the high ledge where Nimbus had rested. At this altitude, the sun did not warm the stone as quickly as it did the valleys below. When he opened his eyes, the air was still cold, crisp as new snow. For a moment, he hovered without moving, simply listening. There was no sound here, no birdsong, no river murmur, no whispering trees. Only silence so complete it felt like the mountain itself was holding its breath. Nimbus had never known such stillness. Part of him wanted to stay hidden in this quiet place, to forget that beyond the next ridge, the winds would grow wilder. But then he remembered the night of falling stars, and the silver trail that had guided him upward, and he knew he could not stop now. He lifted himself carefully, feeling his mist stretch and gather. His edges quivered in the cold, but inside, his heart felt steady. Above, the sky was clear and endless, the stars gone for now but their memory still bright in his thoughts. He turned his gaze north, to the towering ridge that stood between him and the celestial peak. It rose higher than any of the mountains he had already crossed, so high that its top vanished into a thin blue haze. From this distance, Nimbus could see where the path climbed along the face of the rock in a narrow switchback, clinging to the cliffs like a silver thread. That is the way, he told himself. If I can reach the summit, nothing will be between me and the peak. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. I have come this far, he reminded himself. I can go farther. Gathering every wisp of courage, Nimbus floated forward. As he reached the base of the ridge, a chill wind swept down from the upper heights, eddying around him. It smelled of ice and something older, something that reminded him of deep winter nights, when the world slept and the stars felt closer than breath. Nimbus hesitated, pressing himself into a small hollow in the stone. The wind tugged at his edges, testing him. If you wish to shine, you must keep going, he told himself firmly. He eased out of the hollow and began to climb. The narrow path wound upward in long, spiraling curves. On one side rose sheer stone, black and glittering with veins of frost. On the other, the world fell away into emptiness. Far below, the valley of echoing dreams lay hidden behind a curtain of thin clouds. At first, the wind was only a nuisance, a constant push that tried to slow him. But as he rose higher, it grew stronger. It did not howl or shriek. Instead, it was a steady force, silent and relentless, as if the mountain itself were testing his resolve. More than once, Nimbus felt himself unraveling. A gust would pull at him, peeling away thin wisps of mist. Each time, he clung to what remained, gathering himself tighter. I will not let go, he promised. He climbed all morning and into the afternoon. The sun passed overhead, casting long shadows along the trail. When he paused to rest in the lee of a jagged outcrop, he looked back and was startled by how far he had come. The foothills looked small now, the forests no more than dark smudges on the land. Even the river was a glimmering thread, too distant to guide him any longer. I am almost there, he thought. Just a little farther. Nimbus set out again. The higher he climbed, the colder the air became. He felt himself contracting in the chill, growing denser, heavier. At times, he wondered if he would freeze in place, become a sculpture of ice clinging to the ridge. Keep going, he whispered. Just keep going. Late in the day, he reached a place where the path narrowed to no more than a ledge the width of a swallow's wing. Here, the wind did howl, slipping through a gap in the stone with a sound like 1,000 whispered doubts. You are too small, it seemed to say. You will never make it. Nimbus pressed himself flat against the cliff face. He closed his eyes and thought of the orchard where he had drifted unnoticed, of Zephyrosa's voice rumbling like distant thunder, of Lyra's dark eyes watching him from the valley of echoing dreams. I am not alone, he reminded himself. They are with me. My wish matters. When he opened his eyes again, he saw something that made his heart lift. Just ahead, where the ledge curved behind a sharp spur of rock, a faint glow shimmered against the stone. It was not sunlight, this was softer, almost silver. Starlight, he thought with awe. And in that moment, Nimbus understood that he was closer to the celestial peak than he had ever dared believe. Strength returned to him. He lifted himself carefully along the ledge, inch by inch, until he rounded the spur and the wind fell away. There, at last, he found himself on a wide shelf of rock, open to the sky. The sun was setting behind the western mountains, casting the ridge in a halo of gold and crimson. But it was the eastern sky that held Nimbus's gaze. For there, rising above all other peaks, the celestial peak shone. It was more beautiful than he had ever imagined. A tower of pale stone and ice, so high that its summit glowed with the first light of the evening stars. As he watched, the darkness deepened, and the peak seemed to gather the light around it until it looked like it was crowned with 1,000 tiny flames. Nimbus drifted forward, trembling. I have found it, he thought. I have come all the way. He hovered at the edge of the shelf, feeling the cold current slip around him like a caress. For a long time, he did not move, simply watching as the stars emerged one by one above the peak. Tonight, he told himself, I will climb the last distance. I will stand on the summit. And then. He did not finish the thought. He did not need to. All around him, the darkness felt alive with possibility. The winds were hushed now, as though they, too, were waiting to see what he would do next. Nimbus gathered himself, every wisp and tendril. I will become something bright, he whispered. And in the silent dusk, the stars seemed to answer, not with words, but with a shimmer so pure that his heart felt full to bursting. Slowly, he began the final climb. Each movement felt like a promise. Each breath of cold air felt like a blessing. As the last light of day slipped away and night claimed the mountains, Nimbus rose toward the celestial peak, his heart steady and unafraid. He was no longer a lonely puff in the wide sky. He was a seeker. A pilgrim. A dreamer. And perhaps, just perhaps, he was already becoming something bright. Nimbus rose steadily into the night sky. The final stretch to the summit of the celestial peak was not marked by a trail, nor guarded by wind. There was no more path to follow, no more cliffs to climb. Just the open sky, darker than ink and filled with the soft shimmer of 1,000 stars. Yet the air here felt different. It was thinner, yes, but also still, impossibly still, as if time itself slowed in reverence to the height. Each moment seemed to echo inside Nimbus, ringing gently like a bell. Below, the mountains stretched out like a sleeping ocean of stone. Valleys lay hidden beneath mist. Ridges glittered faintly where snow caught starlight. There was nothing above him now but the sky, and nothing between him and the summit but space. This is it, he thought. The place I've searched for all this time. And yet, now that he was here, Nimbus felt strangely quiet inside. Not excited. Not afraid. Just full of the journey, of all he had seen, and of the soft certainty that something important was about to happen. The summit of the celestial peak was not made of stone alone. As Nimbus drifted closer, he saw that it shimmered faintly, as though layered with something more than ice. Something older. Something sacred. It glowed like moonlight frozen into crystal. Nimbus hovered just above it, unsure of what to do next. Should he land? Wait? Speak? And then, from the silence, came a voice. It was not loud. Not deep. Not even spoken in words. It was a feeling, a thought, pressed gently into his mind. You have come far, little one. Nimbus gasped softly. He turned, but saw no one. The sky itself seemed to pulse with presence. The stars, once distant, now glowed brighter, as though leaning in to listen. Who are you? Nimbus asked aloud. And the answer came not in a name, but in a warmth that wrapped around him like a soft breeze. We are what you've always looked up to. We are what guided your wish. We are what you carry inside. Nimbus's edges quivered. The stars, he whispered. We are the light that shines even when hidden. We are the memory of every dream ever spoken into the night. We are the hope that drifts quietly through clouds like you. Nimbus felt so full he thought he might burst into rain, not sad rain, but something like tears made of joy. I've come all this way because I wanted to be one of you, he said. I wanted to shine. Silence. And then. Why do you wish to shine, little cloud? The question caught him off guard. No one had asked it quite like that before. Not even he had. Nimbus hesitated. Because I was tired of being unseen. I used to drift above the orchard, and no one looked up. I wanted to be noticed. To mean something. The silence deepened, thoughtful. The stars shimmered softly. And now? Do you still wish to be seen above all else? Nimbus floated quietly for a long time. He looked out at the world below, at the sky above, at the place he had come to find. And then he answered honestly. No. Not just to be seen. I think I wanted to know I could shine. That I wasn't just a small, forgotten wisp of mist. I wanted to believe that even something as soft and quiet as me could be bright. The silence held him like a cradle. Then you understand. And with those words, something changed. The summit below him glowed more brightly, as though lit from within. The stars overhead shimmered, then began to drift, not falling, but circling slowly around him in quiet patterns, like a dance. And in the center of it all, Nimbus began to glow. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't loud or dazzling. But slowly, steadily, a light gathered in his center, soft at first, like moonlight caught in fog. Then brighter. Warmer. Nimbus looked down and gasped. His own mist shimmered with silvery light, each wisp of vapor reflecting the stars around him. His soft curves lit up like the first blush of dawn. I'm glowing, he whispered. Because you believed, said the voice. You carried your wish with courage. You followed it through wind and shadow. And now, your heart reflects what you have always been becoming. Nimbus could hardly speak. He turned slowly in place, letting the starlight catch every part of him. His light did not shine like a sun, fierce and blazing, it shimmered like water under moonlight, quiet but impossible to ignore. He was still Nimbus. Still soft. Still gentle. But now he was also something radiant. Not because he had changed what he was. But because he had finally embraced it. From far below, the world turned gently in its sleep. And for the first time, a small group of night travelers, an owl flying over the forest, a girl staring up from her window, a boy lying in a field, paused and looked up. There, the girl said. Do you see that little glowing cloud? I've never seen anything like it, whispered the boy. It's beautiful. The owl blinked once, then smiled in the way only owls can, and whispered to the wind, he did it. And high above it all, Nimbus felt a joy deeper than anything he had ever known. Not just because he had been seen, but because he had become what he was meant to be. What happens now? Nimbus asked the stars. Now, you choose. Choose. You may stay and shine beside us, the voice said. Drift through the heavens forever, a star among stars. Nimbus felt his glow pulse with surprise. Truly. Or, the voice continued, you may carry your light back to the valleys below. Show others the way. Be a reminder that even the softest ones can shine. Nimbus looked down once more at the world far below. He imagined Zephyros drifting through the southern winds. He pictured Lyra perched by the pools of dreaming. He thought of the little boy in the orchard, lying on his back, waiting for a star to appear. He didn't need long to decide. I'd like to go back, he said softly. Not forever, but for now. I want to share what I've found. Then go, little light. You are always welcome here. Nimbus took one last look at the summit, at the quiet ring of stars dancing around him. Then, with a heart full of wonder, he turned and began to drift gently downward. He moved slowly, not falling but gliding, leaving behind a faint trail of silver mist that lingered like a memory. His light glowed steady now, not brilliant, not blinding, but beautiful in its own quiet way. And wherever he drifted, those who looked up noticed. A girl on a night walk pointed and smiled. A dog barked softly and tilted its head. A poet scribbled something in his notebook, a star fell and became a cloud. But Nimbus knew the truth. He hadn't fallen. He had risen. Risen to meet his wish. Risen to discover his glow. Risen to become, at last, what he had always carried inside. Nimbus drifted downward from the celestial peak as night deepened around him. The stars kept their silent watch overhead, but now they felt less distant. He knew they were part of him, just as he was part of them. His glow did not fade as he left the summit behind. If anything, it seemed steadier now, as though shining had become as natural as drifting. The pale silver light spread through every wisp of his mist. It felt like carrying a secret lantern in his heart. Below, the mountains waited. The cliffs he had struggled to climb no longer looked so menacing. From above, they seemed like the backs of sleeping giants, peaceful and still. I used to be so afraid, Nimbus thought. But now. He did not finish the thought. He only drifted on, letting the cool air hold him. By the time he reached the ledge where he had rested the night before, dawn had begun to stir at the edges of the sky. He paused there a moment, hovering in the half-light. I don't have to hurry, he reminded himself. I can savor this. He thought of how he had left, small, unnoticed, unsure. And here he was, returning luminous, with the memory of the summit in his heart. A faint breeze whispered around him, as though the mountain itself were congratulating him. Thank you, Nimbus thought, though he knew the stone could not hear him. For teaching me to be brave. He drifted on, following the winding path down the ridge. With each turn, the air grew warmer, thicker with the scents of pine and thawing earth. The valley stretched wide below, waking slowly in the soft light. He wondered if Zephyros would feel him returning, or if Lyra might glimpse his glow from the pools of echoing dreams. Just before the trail bent back toward the western cliffs, Nimbus paused. He turned to look back up at the celestial peak. Even from this distance, it still gleamed with its soft crown of stars. He could almost hear the voice again. You may stay and shine beside us. But he had chosen. He was glad he had. I'll visit again one day, he promised silently. But for now, I belong down there. He continued his slow descent. Below, the valley of echoing dreams waited. The pools would be catching the first gold of morning, reflecting the sky in perfect circles. Nimbus longed to see them again, to hover over their surfaces and watch the dreams that flickered there. He wondered if his own reflection would look different now, if he would see himself glowing, just as he felt inside. When he reached the lower ridges, dawn had fully arrived. The sky shifted from pale rose to soft gold, and the river that threaded the valley gleamed like liquid light. Nimbus felt a swell of warmth. It's even more beautiful than I remembered. As he drifted over the treetops, he felt a hush fall over the pines. He wondered if they recognized him, if they sensed he was no longer quite the same small cloud who had hovered here days ago. Follow the river of starlight, they had whispered. Trust what shines in you. He had done both. And because of that, he had found the celestial peak. As the valley widened, Nimbus saw a familiar shape perched on a tall boulder near the largest pool. Midnight blue feathers flecked with silver. Bright, knowing eyes. Lyra. He felt a rush of joy. Lyra, he called softly as he drifted down. The starry-feathered bird turned her head. For a long moment, she only watched him, her gaze deep and searching. Then she nodded, slow and graceful. You have returned, she said. I have, Nimbus replied. I found it. The peak. Lyra lifted her wings in a gesture that was neither quite a bow nor quite an embrace, but something of both. And did you find what you were seeking? She asked. Nimbus thought about it. Yes, he said finally. I thought I was going there to become something else. But I learned I didn't have to stop being myself to shine. Lyra's eyes glimmered. That is a rare understanding. Nimbus lowered himself until he hovered just above the surface of the largest pool. The water was still, the reflections clear as glass. He looked down, and gasped. His shape glowed pale silver, brighter than any reflection he had seen before. The light came not from the sky above, but from within him. For a moment, he could not speak. I never knew I could look like this, he whispered. Lyra tilted her head. No one can see their true light until they have carried it through darkness, she said gently. You have done that. Nimbus felt something warm spread through his mist. He was glad he had come back. I'm not going to stay forever, he said. But I wanted to see this place again before I go home. Lyra nodded. You will always be welcome here. Nimbus drifted from pool to pool, looking down at each reflection. Some showed old dreams, little children wishing on stars, lonely shepherds, wandering travelers. Others showed new ones, bright and tender as fresh leaves. Each was a reminder that wishing was not weakness, but courage. By midday, Nimbus felt ready to continue. He rose slowly above the valley, turning south. Will you watch for me? He asked Lyra softly. Always, she replied. He hovered one last moment, memorizing the way the pools shimmered in the sun. Then he turned and began the long drift toward home. The journey was gentler now. The winds did not push him as fiercely. Perhaps they, too, sensed he had been changed. He passed over the forests, where young saplings lifted their green crowns to the sky. Over the golden fields, where farmers looked up and shaded their eyes when they saw a small glowing cloud drifting overhead. What a strange thing, they must have thought. Nimbus felt no need to explain. By evening, he reached the edge of the familiar orchard. The trees stood in neat rows, their branches heavy with ripening fruit. He drifted lower, feeling a rush of memory. This was where he had first wished to be something more. Below, a little boy lay on the grass. His eyes were wide, watching the sky. Nimbus hovered above him, letting his glow brighten until it shimmered across the leaves. The boy sat up slowly. His mouth fell open. Papa, he called. Come look. A man emerged from the orchard rows, wiping his hands on his trousers. He looked up, and his eyes softened. Do you see it? The boy asked breathlessly. That cloud. It's glowing. The man nodded, smiling. I see it. Nimbus felt something shift inside, a kind of quiet triumph he had never known. He had come back. But he was no longer unseen. He was the little cloud who had dared to climb higher than he ever thought he could. And now, he was a beacon in the evening sky, a reminder to anyone who looked up that wishes matter, and courage can make even the smallest heart shine. As night fell, Nimbus drifted higher, his light blending with the first stars. I'll visit again, he promised the peak in the distance. But for now, this is enough. And it was. The days passed softly after Nimbus's return. He no longer felt the need to rush or search or ask the skies for signs. Something had settled inside him, something strong and quiet. It was the kind of peace that only comes after a long journey, when you've gone far enough to see both the world and yourself more clearly. He spent his days drifting above fields and forests, his silvery glow never fading. And though he did not speak of it aloud, he knew the stars were still with him, their memory like a melody that lived inside his mist. People below began to notice him. First, it was the children. They would point from windows or meadows, their faces lighting up when they saw the small glowing cloud. Some thought he was magic. Others whispered that he was a wish come true. Soon, stories began to spread. They say he was just an ordinary cloud once, one girl told her sister as they watched him float past. But then he climbed to the highest peak and became a star. No, the sister replied, I heard he fell from the sky and forgot who he was. But now he remembers. Nimbus didn't mind the stories. They weren't exactly true, but they weren't wrong either. Each version carried a little truth, wrapped in wonder. And that, he had come to learn, was the nature of stories. Like dreams, they didn't need to be perfect to matter. One evening, as he drifted over the edge of a quiet village, he heard music. Soft at first, just the distant pluck of strings and the low beat of drums. But as he followed the sound, it grew louder, clearer, and brighter. Laughter danced in the air. Candles flickered in windows and along rooftops. Lanterns floated gently into the night, like fireflies climbing the sky. Nimbus hovered in place, awed by the beauty below. The village was alive with light. Strings of colored bulbs crisscrossed between buildings, casting warm glows over the cobblestones. Children ran in circles with paper stars on sticks, and elders sat in chairs by the square, watching with peaceful eyes. Above the square, a wooden banner stretched between two poles. Painted in curling golden letters were the words, "Festival of Lights, a celebration of all who shine." Nimbus's mist tingled. He had never seen a festival before. He had never seen people gather just to celebrate brightness. Maybe I'm meant to be here, he thought. He lowered himself slowly, careful not to disturb the rising lanterns. As he drew closer, a small gasp rang out from the crowd. "Look," someone shouted. "The star cloud has come." People stopped what they were doing. Heads tilted upward. Eyes widened. Even the music quieted for a heartbeat as they all stared in silent wonder. Then someone began to clap. A child at first, then another, and then the whole crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Nimbus glowed more brightly, not from pride, but from something gentler. Gratitude. Connection. He drifted above the square and paused there, just above the tallest rooftop. The villagers lit more lanterns in his honor. A group of musicians picked up their instruments again and began to play a slow, beautiful tune that rose into the night like a lullaby. Below him, a little girl held up a handmade lantern shaped like a cloud. She looked up and whispered, "Thank you for coming." Nimbus hovered gently over her and let a single raindrop fall, not a sad drop, but a glimmering bead of light that landed in her open palm and sparkled for a moment before fading. The girl smiled and held the memory close. As the music continued, something incredible happened. The sky began to respond. Stars blinked in rhythmic patterns. A soft breeze danced through the square, lifting the lanterns higher. And far above them all, the celestial peak appeared in the distance, its summit glowing faintly in the dark. Nimbus drifted higher again, circling once over the crowd in a slow, graceful arc. He was no longer a stranger here. He was part of the story now. After the festival quieted and the villagers returned to their homes, Nimbus floated just above the rooftops. A few children stayed behind, curled in blankets beside their parents, watching him with sleepy eyes. "Will you stay with us?" one child whispered. "I hope he visits every year," another murmured drowsily. Nimbus didn't speak, but he drifted in slow circles above them, casting a silver glow over their dreams. If wishes had shapes, these would be soft and round, tiny hopes sleeping on rooftops and in cradles, waiting for morning. In the stillness, Nimbus remembered the valley of echoing dreams and the reflections in the pools. How many of those dreams had come from children like these? Maybe this is why I was given light, he thought. Not just to shine, but to remind others they can too. It wasn't about being noticed anymore. It was about giving back what he had been given. Let my glow be a promise, he thought. That dreams matter. That even the smallest one can rise. That night, he didn't climb high into the sky. Instead, he hovered low over the rooftops until dawn, keeping watch like a guardian made of mist and light. When the first rays of morning painted the world in gold and pink, he drifted quietly away. He followed the river for a while. He visited the orchard. He glowed softly over a sleepy lake. Wherever he went, people noticed. Not always with cheers or clapping, sometimes just with a quiet glance, a held breath, a hand reaching upward. Nimbus glowed for them all. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a voice again, not from the stars this time, but from his own heart. This is what it means to shine. Seasons passed, and still Nimbus wandered the skies, not searching, not fleeing, but simply being. He was not always glowing now. Some days, he let himself fade back into quiet mist, drifting unnoticed through the blue. Other days, he shimmered faintly above fields and rooftops, his silver glow soft like moonlight on water. And that, he had learned, was enough. His light wasn't something he had to force. It came naturally now, rising from the peace within him like a breath. He had not forgotten the summit, nor the stars, nor the voice that had welcomed him into their circle. But he no longer felt he had to stay among them to be one of them. I carry them with me, he often thought. In the way I move. In the way I glow. One cool autumn evening, Nimbus returned to the orchard where his journey had begun. The trees were golden now, leaves swirling in lazy spirals around the trunks. Apples lay in baskets, ready for pressing. Children played between the rows, chasing the wind. And there, lying on the same patch of grass as before, was the little boy who had once stared up at the sky with a wish in his heart. He was older now, his legs longer, his cheeks less round, but his eyes still held the same quiet wonder. He looked up the moment Nimbus appeared and smiled. "You came back," the boy whispered. Nimbus hovered low above the orchard, letting his glow warm the branches. The boy sat up and pulled something from his coat pocket. A drawing. A simple one, sketched with colored pencil, a little cloud, glowing, high above a mountain. "I never forgot you," he said. Nimbus pulsed gently in response, drifting just above his head. He didn't need words. "I made a wish on you that night," the boy continued. "I wished I wouldn't stop dreaming. Not ever." He looked up again, his eyes bright. "And I haven't." Nimbus drifted in a slow circle, and a single apple rolled from a high branch and landed softly beside the boy. He laughed, and for a moment, the orchard was filled with the sound of joy. This is shining, Nimbus thought. Not just lighting the sky, but lighting something in others. He stayed over the orchard that night. The stars were gentle and quiet. Crickets sang in the distance. The boy slept beneath a quilt with the drawing clutched in his hand, and Nimbus kept watch. And in the stillness of the dark, he began to remember something he hadn't thought of in a long time. The other clouds. His friends. Those who had watched him drift away that first morning without understanding why. He hadn't seen them in so long, and though he had changed, he wondered if they had too. Maybe it's time. So, as dawn stretched its first sleepy fingers across the hills, Nimbus turned west and began the long drift home. The journey was quiet. He followed the same paths he had once taken with trembling edges, over mountains and forests and the valley of echoing dreams. But this time, there was no fear. Only peace. By late afternoon, he saw the familiar outlines of the wide-open sky he had once called home. Dozens of clouds drifted there, soft and round, some large, some small. They floated lazily over hills and meadows, their edges blushing faintly in the afternoon sun. None of them noticed him at first. He approached slowly, quietly, like a dream returning to someone who had stopped believing. And then a small, puff-shaped cloud turned and gasped. "Nimbus," it whispered. The others turned. A hush fell over the sky. "Nimbus," another echoed. "Is it really you?" Nimbus hesitated. He didn't glow at first. He waited. Let them see him as he was, misty, familiar, unchanged in all the ways that mattered. And then, as they floated closer, his glow began to return. Softly. Naturally. A quiet shimmer that pulsed from within like a memory. The other clouds gathered around him, murmuring in awe. "You glow now," said one, wide-eyed. Nimbus nodded. "I went far," he said. "All the way to the celestial peak." Gasps echoed through the sky. "You really found it?" asked another. Nimbus smiled. "Yes. But what I found mattered more than the peak. I found that, even a little cloud can carry light. You don't have to be made of fire or stars. You just have to keep going. The clouds were silent. Some were weeping softly, misty tears that drifted in tiny spirals. But we thought you left us, one cloud whispered. We didn't think we mattered anymore. Oh, but you do, Nimbus said. You always did. I was just too scared to see it back then. But I know now, I wouldn't have made it without the sky we shared, without what we were together. And then, something incredible happened. One by one, the clouds around him began to shimmer. First a flicker. Then a glow. Then a steady soft light, like starlight caught in fog. They weren't as bright as Nimbus at first, but it was there, a gentle gleam in their mist. Proof that they, too, carried the ability to shine. Tears of joy misted the air. And laughter. And quiet, reverent awe. Nimbus had returned. But more than that, he had brought light with him. Not just for himself, but for all. That night, for the first time in their sky's history, the clouds held their own festival. Not of thunder. Not of rain. But of light. They danced in slow circles high above the sleeping world, glowing and laughing, whispering wishes and telling stories. They painted pictures with their mist. They sang the wind's old songs. They glowed until dawn. And the people below? They noticed. Eyes looked up from farms and forests, from windows and hillsides. Look, whispered a child. The sky is glowing, said a mother, awestruck. The clouds are dancing, murmured an old man, holding his wife's hand. And above it all, Nimbus floated at the center, not as the only light, but as the one who had reminded them they had always had it. He was no longer trying to be a star. He was something else now. A beginning. A guide. A promise. That even the softest hearts can shine. That wishes can lead to places beyond fear. And that no journey, no matter how far, ever truly ends. Because the light we find, we carry it forward. We give it away. We let it grow. And when we forget, there will always be another cloud, drifting brave and slow, ready to glow in the darkness, just enough to remind us. We shine, too.